So my name is Peter Dakin. I'm your MC for today. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and also pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend that respect to all Indigenous Australians present today. Thanks today will be given by Ruth Carlos Martinez, followed by the loyal toast presented by President Adrian. And please ensure your glass is charged. Over to you. Thank you, Ruth.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. This is indeed the year of imagination. We've been doing that a lot because, you know, I've been working on international service, helping overseas countries and marginalized countries. And I've been faced with interesting scenarios with the Rotary Foundation, because I need to do global grants, right? And, you know, stretching the mighty dollar. For me to be able to do this, I just want to say something. So to create something out of nothing, I need to be a miracle worker, especially with dealing with funds. To turn something small or ordinary into something big and wonderful, we need a little creativity. Sometimes I must confess, creative accounting. Such is the essence with Rotary as we work on projects with very meager resources. But as Rotarians, District Governor Amanda will agree, we can imagine and are equipped with a compassionate big heart. If this week we all stop looking wistfully at what's impossible and instead we look inventively or creatively at what's feasible, we will see a most inspiring possibility. Take whatever limited resources we have, combine it with the unlimited power of our imagination, and we'll be brilliant. And oddly, the more we draw on our experience and insight, the greater air of authority we'll have, and the more respect and partnership we earn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Now, Rotarians and guests, a toast to Australia and Rotary International. Australia and Rotary International. Thank you, and please be seated. We'll now be breaking for lunch. For those of you who are online, welcome. You'll be invited to join a breakout room where you can enjoy fellowship with others who are online, or alternatively take your own lunch break, and we will reconvene around 1:10 p.m. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, all members, visitors and guests. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to our 6th meeting of this Rotary year, our 4,949th club meeting in our 102nd year. And remember, it's only 42 weeks until the Rotary International Convention here in Melbourne. This year, of course, is a special year for our club because it marks the centenary of when General Sir John Monash was our club's 2nd ever president. So that makes today a significant day in the club's calendar, particularly for this year, with the awarding of our Monash Medal. It's an honour to welcome the 2022 recipient, Emeritus Professor Peter Darville, AO. Peter will be more formally introduced by past President Peter Rogers on behalf of the 0808 committee later in the program. But in the meantime, would you please acknowledge and make him welcome? Thank you, Peter. On this noteworthy day, we have many guests. So as guests of our club, we have District 900 Governor Amanda Wendt, and also Michael Bennett, the great-grandson of Sir John Monash. And a particular welcome to you today, Michael, on this centenary, as we spoke about before. We also have past Monash Medal recipients, including Major General Jim Barry and Professor Jeffrey Rosenfeld. Would you please join me in making these club guests welcome? Hosted by our Rotary Foundation Committee, we have Hannah Gandy. Hannah is a John Monash Scholar, and she's successfully nominated by Rotary Club of Melbourne for a Rotary Global Grants Scholarship. Hannah's leaving shortly to do a Master of Laws specialising in social justice at University College London. Also from the John Monash Foundation, we have the CEO, Anne-Marie Rolls, and colleague Trudy Camilleri, who's their Director of Scholarships and Alumni. So please make all these guests welcome. Continuing on, we have a visiting Rotarian, and I invite you to stand with Peter Davis today. Visiting Rotarian Vinnie Dogra, who's been a member of the Rotary Club of Adelaide and has just moved to Melbourne to be closer to her son and daughter. So we very much hope to see you here at our club whenever you're able to, Vinnie. It's a very strong welcome to you today as well. So thank you. That's right. In addition, we have Michael Hedbury, who's the chair of the Saluting Monash Council of Victoria, and Kathy Rogers, both guests of Peter Rogers. So please join me in making all of our visiting Rotarians, visitors, and guests of members welcome. Thank you. And now for our club notices. Now, first of all, those of you who are very media savvy would have seen a past president of our club emblazoned across various media channels in this past week. And of course, I talk none other than past president Quinn Scalzo. And I invite Quinn to come to the podium now to tell us a bit about his recent fame in the media and a little bit about Pompeii in Melbourne. Over to you, Quinn.
Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Yes, I'm going to talk to you about an event or a ceremony that took place last Friday in Bennett's Lane. Bennett's Lane should be a location that some of you would know. It was very famous because it used to hold all the jazz meetings in that location for many, many years. So on Friday, there was an archaeological unveiling and a sod turning ceremony, which means that the site, which had been under excavation for about 3 months, was unveiled, and we were able to see the work that had been done by Heritage Victoria and about 25 archaeologists who had been digging there for over a long period of time. What we discovered was interesting. It was clearly highlighting that from an Indigenous perspective, there wasn't any serious matter discovered. From an archaeological point of view, clearly there are over 4,000 items discovered. Nothing too fascinating, but enough to fill a few glass cases that we hope to put into the building, which will develop once everyone moves from the building. We hope to put a 22-storey office tower on that site. So it's a very important event for Melbourne because there are not too many CBD facilities going up at the moment. As you know, things are very, very quiet. It was interesting because we had the Lord Mayor, we had all the 3 television stations there, and we also had other media. So if you did watch the news on the Friday night, you probably caught a glimpse of the ceremony. If you read The Age on Saturday, there was also a very large article, and some of the online films were indicating that we were throwing dirt in the air, which was what they call a sod ceremony, where you get some shovels and 4 or 5 people throw some soils in the air, reflecting the fact that the site, which had been managed by Heritage Victoria for about 3 months, is handed back to the owners of the land for us to continue our work in building this tower. It was fascinating in reality what was found. It was proven to be that it was a very low socioeconomic community that lived in the area. It reflects about 1845 and onwards. I repeat what I said earlier, from an Indigenous perspective, there wasn't a lot of activity by Indigenous tribes in that area. Some of the facilities which they were able to discover, a couple of very small factories which are on the site, were quite, again, the traditional things. I thought there was one that might have been someone doing some leather work. Someone might have been doing some, some work, again, around sort of an old-fashioned way of looking after things like the carriages and things of that nature. Not a great deal, but I think it's always very important for Victoria to know what its past is. We're a very young country, and anything you can discover about us that's only a couple of 100 years old is always very valuable. From a perspective of what was discovered, as I say, it was really interesting. Losing the site to Heritage Victoria was an interesting process, because once they come in, you can't do anything on the site. It's a very expensive involvement of Heritage Victoria as well. We had to employ 25 fully qualified archaeologists. In the good old days, I'm told that it was always uni students that did that work, and they enjoyed it because they got paid for it. But anyway, it's the process that we had to go through. We were very fortunate, and in addition to having the 3 channels there, the Lord Mayor was there, and so it was a bit of fun. And from a family perspective, of which there are 2 families who are involved in this massive project for Victoria, I'd like to say, if you don't mind, it is Victorian owned that's going to build it, and Australian taxpayers that are going to pay tax on it. So we think it's a great project. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Nothing escapes the eagle eyes of our Rotary Melbourne sort of media watch team. So it's good to get you there. And I think, isn't it great hearing from our own members about different things that they're doing outside of Rotary? So that's a request out to all of our members and friends of our club. If you do hear anything that's going on with our members sort of on the side, I think the term's a side hustle now, anything like that that's going on, please let us know, because it'd be great to showcase our members in that way up here on the podium. I've got a few more notices to give today. The first one is regarding our AGM. So the date of the Rotary Club of Melbourne Inc. annual general meeting has now been fixed at 16th of November 2022. Formal notices will be issued in due course. The setting of the date of the annual general meeting triggers a series of events, starting with the forming of the President's Nominating Committee. The Nominating Committee consists of 9 members of the club, one of whom is the President, one is the President-elect, 2 are the most recent past presidents available, 2 are board-elected members, and 3 are elected by the membership. So I'm pleased to announce that the board has confirmed the 2 past presidents to serve on the Nominating Committee, immediate past President Reg Smith and past President Kevin Sheehan. And the board appointed members are Vice President Peter Davis and Marg Lesser. So I now call for nominations for the 3 candidates elected by the members. Nominations may be made in any number by any member in writing, with each nomination being signed by the nominator and another member, and must carry acceptance of nominations signed by the member nominated. No past president is eligible for nomination by the members for any of the 3 vacancies. No member who has twice accepted membership on the nominating committee is eligible for service in any subsequent year except as a presidential officer. Ooh. Nominations must be made within 2 weeks, that is by 2:05 on Wednesday, 24th of August, and nomination forms and any questions should be directed to the Honorary Secretary, John Saunders. Good. Over with those formalities. More pleasant thing to announce today is that Sue McCarthy and Stephen Lake both celebrate their birthday today. So, yes. Indeed. So both Sue and Stephen have made extensive contributions to the club in service, philanthropy and fellowship, and we thank them sincerely for this. We'll publish a little bit more about their Rotary service in the forthcoming bulletin. Now, Sue and Stephen, I know you don't mind the publicity, Sue, and where's Stephen? Would you please come and join me up here on the podium? Oh, no. That's right. Oh, yes. No, we're just timing it. We're just timing it well. We've got a special musical interlude about to come as well. So first we'll take our photo opportunities. So first, whilst we wait, would you like to first blow out the candles on the cake, on your cake? So Sue, go for it. And all together. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Sue and Stephen. Happy birthday to you. Hip hip. Hip hip. Hip hip. All right. Happy birthday to you both. A number of members have asked me what it's like being the president of the Rotary Club of Melbourne, and I guess are you busy or how are you finding it? Well, it's a pretty unique sort of role, and I know there's a number of past presidents in the room and they would certainly share that view as well. But as president of the Rotary Melbourne, it's a great honour to participate in certain events. And on Monday morning at 8 a.m. on the 8th of August, of course, the 8th of the 8th, the anniversary of the Battle of Amiens, it was a real honour to be able to participate in the commemorative service at the shrine, and on behalf of the Rotary Club of Melbourne to lay a wreath within the sanctuary of the shrine as well. So not only is it as today, I guess, highlights with the importance of the life work of Sir John Monash, but also the lives lost in the Battle of Amiens. To think that the Rotary Club of Melbourne commemorates that and as part of that is really a fantastic thing and something that we'll continue to do for many, many years from now. For those who missed it, you can actually watch the service online. The Shrine records these services. You could have watched it live if you were up at that time. But alternatively, you can go to the Shrine YouTube page and we'll publish a link in the bulletin to that as well. But it was a wonderful morning, and we also got to hear briefly from Professor Darville as well on that day. So thank you for that, Professor. Also in the week, yesterday I found myself at the Donations in Kind store in West Footscray. And for those members or guests who have never been to the Donations in Kind store, you've probably heard a bit about it over time, but it's a wonderful warehouse where Rotary goods are able, we receive them as donations and then send them out across the world. So over the 22 years of the Rotaries the Donations in Kind store existing, we've now had, I think it's close to 650 containers sent around the world. So if you sort of do your quick sums, that equates to about one a fortnight over 22 years, sort of containers full of goods that have been sent out to places that need them. And the value of the goods and everything tossed in between is up in the vicinity of $80 million worth of goods now. So that's just incredible. When I was there, we're actually trying to engage with some schools to provide volunteering opportunities for schools. And Bob Glindeman, past President Bob Glindeman, who's there every week, was there to actually help explain it and highlight and show the hospital equipment that we're trying to donate and send out, the school tables and chairs. And it's just a wonderful thing to worth remembering. Other volunteering opportunities that our club has, in addition to Donations in Kind, of course, include Second Bite, which is recommencing now after a bit of a COVID layover. So again, please see Bob Glindeman if you're interested in participating at Paran Market to help collect excess food on a Sunday. We also have Rymern, which is the Rotary Inner Melbourne Emergency Relief Network, which helps get goods, which goes to, so things like household items, whether it's beds or furniture and other things. So please see Catherine Baxter around that. And we're also calling for volunteers for Around the Bay, which is coming up soon. So we need volunteers to help as marshals on Around the Bay. So please see Jim Orchard over that. And with that concludes my notices. And importantly, it's time to draw the raffle. So Peter Rogers, can I get you to assist with that? And the winning ticket for the raffle is B55. It's a purple ticket, B55. Oh, Richard Dent, congratulations. So certainly a lot to cover today. And without further ado, I call to the podium the chair of the day, Peter Rogers, to take over today's meeting.
Thank you, President Adrian. It gives me extraordinary pleasure to introduce Peter Darville, Professor Peter Darville, as the 2022 Monash Medal awardee. John Monash was one of our club's founding members at the commencement of our club in 1921 and became second president of this club for the 1922-23 year. On this day, 99 years ago, Sir John had just stepped down as president, and he was asked to say a few words at our club meeting on the 8th of August, so virtually this day, 99 years ago. Peter Davis has drawn my attention to the entry, the one paragraph entry in the minutes of the meeting of that day, in which Sir John was asked to give a brief account of the battle, which greatly assisted the end of the war in less than 100 days from the 8th of August. The account in the minutes goes like this. Sir John gave a most interesting address on the Battle of Hamel and spoke of the new tank that was used in this battle for the first time, and also of the new type of attack by the infantry. He described it how at 20 minutes past 4 in the morning, the Canadian and Australian troops, flanked by the French on that day, pushed forward and before nightfall broke through a frontage of the German lines 12 miles long and stood 5 or 6 miles inside the German lines. 10,000 prisoners were taken by the Australians on that day, and the biggest mobile gun captured during the war was captured by the Australians on that day. So this is a very understated account of the technology and planning involved in one of the most significant battles that changed the direction of the war. And by any measure, Sir John Monash is an outstanding Australian. We think of, particularly of his words to students, oriented towards students: adopt as your fundamental creed that you equip yourself for life, not solely for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the whole community. Our club has, since 2010, awarded the Monash Medal to an outstanding Australian for the contribution of that person to the Australian community and beyond. The criteria for awarding the medal are 3 requirements: demonstrated leadership, integrity, and service, key Monash values and values of Rotary. Peter Darville has in the last 12 months completed 50 years service under the banner of Monash. First, the university, I think 33 years at the university. You can correct me if I get any of this wrong later. Then the Monash Engineering Foundation, and then the Sir John Monash Foundation. In each of these roles, he's shown leadership, integrity, and concern for the community. He was Vice-Chancellor of Monash University from 2002 to 2003, when Richard Larkins was appointed. Prior to being Vice-Chancellor, he was the Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Research and Development and IT, a position he held from 1993 to 2003. And previously to that, he was Dean of the Faculty of Engineering. Peter shares a common area of expertise with Sir John Monash, being a civil engineer, and he's written widely on topics related to civil engineering structures. While VC at Monash, he was responsible for the renaming of the Monash Freeway from the Southeastern Freeway to the Monash Freeway. And later he supported the erection of the Sir John Monash statue, which our club also supported in a campaign led by Michael Hedbury, who is also here today as one of our guests. I could go on, but I won't. Sufficient to say, as someone who's travelled in your wake, Peter, in some of your journey, I can certainly testify your worthiness of this award and your embracing of the values that it represents. So without any further, I'd like to invite Michael Bennett to come to the stage and help the President award the Monash Medal for 2022 to Professor Peter Darville.
That's right, the Rotary Club of Melbourne Monash Medal 2022. And I'll read the citation. General Sir John Monash is the most significant Australian for his professional, military and community leadership and service before, during and after World War I. Leadership, integrity and service, core values of Rotary, integral in the life of Sir John Monash, are the criteria for selecting the Monash Medal recipient. This year, it is awarded to Emeritus Professor Peter Darville, AOFTSE, for leadership, integrity and service in his outstanding contribution through his leadership at Monash University as Vice-Chancellor to higher education research and teaching in the field of civil engineering, and to his extensive contribution to the establishment of the Sir John Monash Foundation postgraduate scholarships.
Thank you, President Adrian. Peter, thank you. You gilded the lily a bit there. And Rotarians, thank you for this great honour. I'm a bit overwhelmed, I must say, seeing how distinguished this group is, and of course, knowing how distinguished the previous recipients are. Exalted company indeed, including Sir Gus Nossel, Tim Costello, Tim Fisher, Fiona Wood, others, and another engineer, John Bertrand, who you may recall did his master's degree in wind engineering under Bill Melbourne at guess which university. And we all know what came of that with the America's Cup. I too was greatly honoured to be at the ceremony at the shrine commemorating the Battle of Amiens. Let all men know that this is holy ground. This shrine, established in the hearts of men as on the solid earth, commemorates a people's fortitude and sacrifice. Let all men, ye therefore that follow, give remembrance. I find that very moving whenever I go there. The title to my remarks is in response to this award, is Shadowing the Great Man, obviously with a capital T, G and M. As mentioned by Peter Rogers, it is a source of great pride to me that I have spent 50 years, in a sense, marching under his banner. 33 years at Monash University and 17 with the General Sir John Monash Foundation, whose CEO is here today. More on that later. When I applied for a job as a lecturer in civil engineering structures at Monash in 1970, I asked my PhD supervisor at Princeton University to be a referee. He asked, "What is this Monash?" Well, simply put, I replied, he, like you and me, was an engineer, in fact, one of great distinction, and as well was a general of genius in World War I, under whom 1,000 raw American troops fought at the stunningly successful Battle of Hamel, and the US awarded him their Distinguished Service Medal. Let me quickly sketch the evolution of the leadership of the great man, and then refer to some of my own experiences, not in the theatre of war, but in the groves of academe, or that sheltered workshop, as some refer to it. Many of you know the Monash story in detail, and if you're like me, you never tire of it. I'm going to have to skip some of this because I always write too much on this subject. He was born in Melbourne in 1865 to German immigrant parents, schooled first there, then in Jerilderie, New South Wales, and Tim Fisher would often remind us of that, and for his final 4 years at Scotch College, Melbourne. It so happens that I went to the same school, not Jerilderie, and saw his name on the honour boards and drank from the water fountain installed in memory of his grandson, John Monash Bennett, who died aged 7 from influenza or rheumatic fever. Monash was Dux of Scotch in 1881. I was not. He entered the University of Melbourne in 1882, had a very patchy academic career, having many other interests and being quite the ladies' man. He did not complete his engineering degree until 1891, 9 years later, but then rapidly added arts and law degrees and a master's in engineering. He developed considerable military leadership skills in the state and later national militia during this time and throughout his engineering career, focusing mainly on concrete structures, which it so happens became my area of expertise as well. I had entered the University of Melbourne in 1959, 2 years before Peter Rogers and Michael Hedbury were in the first cohort of students at the new Monash University, which is the first Australian university to be named after an Australian, in case you'd forgotten that. My undergraduate career was undistinguished, and I didn't develop leadership skills and supervise major projects such as the Outer Circle Railway, like Monash did while still a student. Think about that. Monash was determined to be a leader from an early age. In his diary, written at the age of 20, he records that in socializing with a friend, he makes it his a special business to show him that I still hold the upper hand. I have no doubt that the rigors and carnage of war tempered his autocratic views on leadership. But as expressed in his own book, as Corps Command, the first task as Corps Commander is to secure complete domination over the thoughts, action and policy of his senior commanders, so that they and all the men under them have a sense of responsibility to themselves, their commanders, their comrades, their men, their country and their cause. In mentioning those groups, he somewhat dilutes the rather arrogant first phrases. He distributed great quantities of maps to the troops when they were about to go into battle, and was assiduous in providing advice in the greatest of detail to all and sundry. Innovative, even revolutionary, was his policy of promotion from the ranks, giving due recognition to those who had an appetite for leadership. In his own words, from almost the earliest days of the war, violence was done to a deep-rooted tradition of the British Army, which discouraged any promotion from the ranks. The Australian Imperial Force changed all that. Those privates, corporals and sergeants who displayed under battle conditions a notable capacity for leadership were earmarked for preferment. They afforded to all its men a tangible and visible proof of the recognition of merit and capacity, and their example was always a powerful stimulus to all their former comrades. There was no officer caste, no social distinction in the whole force. In not a few instances, men of humble origin and belonging to the artisan class rose during the war, from privates to the command of battalions. The whole Australian Army became automatically graded into leaders and followers, according to the individual merits of every man, and there grew a wonderful understanding between them. I read at the ceremony at the shrine on Monday the letter that Lieutenant General Sir John Monash sent to his troops on the day before the Battle of 8th of August. And I read now only the closing paragraph. I earnestly wish every soldier of the Corps the best of good fortune and a glorious and decisive victory, the story of which will re-echo throughout the world and will live forever in the history of our homeland. And so it has, and so it does. Subsequent victories of the Allied armies in the next 2 months led to the German surrender, an armistice of November the 11th. In those amazing 2 weeks of manic initiative and bravery by Australian troops, it is said that Monash fed his men on victory. For the next year, Monash oversaw the repatriation of about 200,000 AIF soldiers and arranged for all kinds of educational opportunities for them at that time. After the war, he became, as you know, the first Chief Commissioner of the State Electricity Commission opening up the coal reserves of the Latrobe Valley to power the economic development of Victoria. He was much in demand, became president of Rotary, the Australasian Association for the Advancement of Science, the Victorian Institute of Engineers, the Wallaby Club, and sundry others. He was awarded a Doctor of Engineering by the University of Melbourne for his book, The Australian Victories in France in 1918. He also became honorary, part-time, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Melbourne. He is reputed to have said that the university is about as difficult to manage, if not more so, than an army. Well, I'm sure that Vice-Chancellors think so, but I can't think of another that has also managed an army. In the depths of the Depression, he resisted calls from right-wing groups to lead a coup against the federal government. In his much-quoted rebuttal, he wrote, "Depend upon it, the only hope for Australia is the ballot box and an educated electorate." This was integrity writ large. He was wary of politics and also famously said, "Politicians lie, even when the truth would serve them well." In 1926, reflecting on leadership to the Beefsteak Club, he said, "The capacity to form judgments rapidly and soundly is, I believe, more temperamental than intellectual. A successful leader must be unemotional to the extent of being callous to the external influences which evoke joy or sorrow, elation or despondency. He must be indifferent to praise or blame. He must have the capacity to persevere calmly and dispassionately with the business in hand. He must be patient to a degree. He must have determination and steadfastness of purpose of a very high order. He must have an exalted confidence in himself and in the correctness of his judgment, amounting to an intellectual arrogance." The most critical of all the tasks of a leader, however, he said, is the creation and maintenance of the morale of his men, infusing by example that devotion to the cause. Monash's greatest gift as a leader was to define a problem in simple terms and reduce complex difficulties into manageable problems. I also would assert that his naturally forceful style was tempered by empathy for his men. He hated the carnage and innovations to limit the frightful loss of life made him a greater leader. As he said, "I had formed the theory that the true role of the infantry was not to expend itself upon heroic physical effort, nor to wither away under merciless machine gun fire, nor to impale itself on hostile bayonets, nor to tear itself to pieces in hostile entanglements, but on the contrary, to advance under the maximum possible protection of the maximum possible array of mechanical resources in the form of guns, machine guns, tanks, mortars, and aeroplanes, to advance with as little impediment as possible, to be relieved as far as possible of the obligation to fight their way forward, to march resolutely, regardless of the din and tumult of battle, to the appointed goal, and there to hold and defend the territory gained, and to gather in the form of prisoners, guns, and stores the fruits of victory. I would maintain that empathy with your troops is just as important for leaders in civilian life." Let me proffer a couple of examples of leadership integrity from my own experience in a much more peaceful and pedestrian world. What is leadership? Wikipedia, the ability of an individual to lead, influence, or persuade other individuals, teams, or entire organizations. The leader enlists the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common and ethical task. Thank you. I see simply, in simple terms, that it starts from identifying that something needs to be done or should be done in a different way or better, then identifying the changes to be made, then explaining it to others, demonstrating by example, and energizing or animating others to the cause. When I was an undergraduate at Melbourne University, I have to say that it was for the most part an oppressive and demotivating experience. Some of our lecturers were inspiring, many were not, delivering their material in a take it or leave it manner. The lecture theatres were overcrowded and we sat for 4 hours in a row in those theatres and were gasping in foul air by the time 1 o'clock came. The student cohort entered as bright and enthusiastic, but the faculty, for the most part, genuinely believed that the higher proportion of the class that failed, that proved how elite the course was. I was lucky to survive. Many of my very bright colleagues did not and became tragic wastage to engineering. I didn't realise at the time how profoundly this had affected me. When I was interviewed in 1970 for the lecturer job at Monash, I was only asked about my research, not about my liking or aptitude for teaching. I therefore enrolled in a dip ed tertiary and was advised by my head of department that it would limit my promotional prospects. A few years later, I became president of the Monash Staff Association and later of the Federation of Australian University Staff Associations, for the simple reason that I identified that some things needed to be done. By then, I had developed a taste for leadership that I had never knew I had had and applied for and became the Dean of Engineering. I then decided, after all those years, that Monash would not oppress its students as we had been at Melbourne. We redesigned the course, making it less rigid, open to different pathways, combined degrees, and so on. And Madeline McManus is a wonderful product of all this. And always with the customer or the student in mind. Given the talent of the students, we recognise that our success could be measured by both rigour and handsome pass rates. There was some stiff opposition from reactionary professors, but we managed to overcome it. On the question of integrity, most people have it as a matter of course and practice it every day, otherwise the world wouldn't go round in a reasonably satisfactory way. You generally recognise it or are reminded of it by its absence. In the academic field, as in others, some elements are attributing to others due credit, not taking credit for what others have done. As they say, success has many parents, failure is an orphan. Not promoting others' work as your own. Presenting all information faithfully, not selectively, in order to enhance your prospects. And this one is a great and ever-present danger in academe. I refer not only to data, but to the pressure of group thought. A very painful example was that of a former Vice-Chancellor of Monash University. It turned out that in his earlier career, in his many publications, he had systematically plagiarised the work of others. He was less than frank with the Monash University Council when confronted with the first evidence, claiming it was an isolated case. Other cases quickly came to light, and the council had no choice but to ask him to leave. This man was a strong and forceful leader. He brushed aside dissent and misgivings and was given to cutting corners to get ahead. But he came undone by his own lack of integrity. Never a better example in my mind that leadership and integrity must go together. When I became Vice-Chancellor, I was asked by a journalist whether this episode had damaged the university. My reply was to ask the question, wouldn't you like your son or daughter to go to a university that had the principles and guts to sack a VC for plagiarism? We expect that the students understand and practice integrity and scholarship. This has to come from the top. Ideally, humility is also part of integrity and leadership. In the words of Rudyard Kipling, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two impostors just the same. There are other elements like paying respect upwards, downwards, and across. Returning to a more pleasant subject, In 2002, the General Sir John Monash Foundation was established, led by Sir Peter Gratian, who was then Chief of Army. So it came from Army, not from Monash University. It is a national scheme, not a Monash University one. Its purpose is to provide generous postgraduate scholarships for potential leaders in diverse fields, inspired by another of his famous remarks, which Peter has already recited. Adopt as your fundamental creed that you will equip yourself for life, not solely for your own benefit, but for the benefit of the whole community. You may know that Rhodes Scholars go only to Oxford. Our John Monash Scholars may go to any of the great universities of the world, depending on discipline. In selecting the scholars, we look for academic excellence, community service or selflessness, and leadership experience or potential. How similar to the Rotary values of leadership, integrity, and service. Returning to the man who inspired this gathering today and who was your second president. The legacy of John Monash is enormous. Some things are obvious, like the introduction of the technology of reinforced concrete for many types of structures, the leadership in war that generated such great national pride, the building of an economy on cheap power from the Latrobe Valley, his love of learning, of music and theatre, his cultured life, his leadership style, his principled views on citizenship. All these are legacies, so too the magnificent shrine, such a moving place to visit, and his enormous influence on the development of science and technology and on the University of Melbourne. We citizens want our country to be well-governed, civilised, prosperous, cultured, fair, and to excel in as many fields as possible. We want leaders who inspire us to achieve these things. Monash was such a man. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. In a club that does so much in so many committees, we sometimes run out of time, and we have today. So, Peter, there will be no opportunity for questions, but those who want to chat to Peter afterwards, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to them. So again, Peter, extraordinary presentation, very worthy winner, and thank you for accepting our award. Again, thank you. Thanks also to our distinguished guests who were mentioned earlier. Thank you for coming. Thanks to our MC, Peter Dakin, and to Ruth Carlos Martinez for her reflections, and also to the lunch setup team and reception team for their efforts. A reminder that next week we meet here again at number 35 for lunch. Our guest speakers will be Professor Doug Hilton, the Executive Director of WEHI, the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute, and Senior Researcher Dr. Danushka Marapana. Their topic will be WEHI Research Impact and Combating Malaria. Please stand, and we'll close by singing the national anthem.